The Indifference is a being that we are not now closer to understanding than we were first when we started to inspect it. I don't think we will ever completely understand it, but at the same time, I do know that the Indifference has had a modicum of control for possibly thousands of years. So listen closely because I'm going to get into a lot of speculation. Die, Dekrot scum. So we all know the Indifference has this insanely big influence on essentially everybody in the Warframe universe, but it gets so much more intense, so much more complicated than I can ever imagine. I'm gonna name a few names. And those few names are people that I know about that has probably made a deal with the Indifference at some point in their life. Some of them you might know, some of them you might not know. The Operator, Nessie Rusalka. Those are two easy ones. Margulis, Ornata, or even the Lotus. Parvus Granum, Albrecht Entrati, maybe. And maybe so much more. Now I'm going to talk about all of those different people. Some of them willingly made a deal, some of them might not have made the deal, but all of them have one thing in common. The Indifference has some control over their actions. But it gets even more complicated, so stick around and stay tuned. Let's start with the doppelganger situation. We all know throughout Warframe, you have your doppelganger, the void entity that keeps on smiling at you, keeps on telling you, hey kiddo, greeting you, being there when it shouldn't be there, and you kind of face off against this whole entity in multiple occasions, right? Not maybe physical, but mentally at least. Now, this is where it gets interesting. In the Owlweaver update, it is noted that there are two different copies of you somewhere out there.
There are two creatures that look very much like you out there. Find the wholesome one and keep the other at bay.
Now we can all kind of assume that the one that's friendly is the Drifter and the one that's not friendly is the void entity or the void copy of yourself. But what if you can apply that same principle with everyone that the Indifference have had contact with? Imagine this. When Albrecht Entrati went into the void, how did he get out? He used the Seriglass bell to get into the void, but that broke into a gajillion pieces, cutting him up and getting destroyed. How then did he get out? And if so, how do we not know that the void didn't make multiple copies of him as well? Maybe multiple timelines or versions of him came out of the void. Where is his Drifter? Where is his void entity? And how do we know that Albrecht Entrati, Dr. Entrati, isn't still stuck in the void? What would happen if the clone version of Albrecht Entrati actually came out of the void? Well, that would explain multiple situations. At the end of 1999, you see Albrecht Entrati talking to you about going to Tau, etc. You might have played that mission. If you have not, oh, spoiler alert.
Murmur expelled. Tau is in sight. They've given their lives for this. Make it count.
Just go.
No. I can save them.
Not unless you know them.
But he is not cut up. He is not beat up. He doesn't look like somebody who has just been tortured by the Indifference, or a copy of whatever the Indifference wanted to make.
That's it, isn't it? The poison to your plan.
And what is that?
Love.
So where did all the bruises go? Is it one, the Indifference that was actually talking to us, which I will be getting into in a moment, or was it maybe because Albrecht Entrati himself is a clone? A void entity formed of himself that might not even know that it's a void entity, that might think that it is himself. As Eleanor mentions, when you talk to Eleanor in the POM PC, or whatever you want to call that, I don't really use that a lot. She does ask the question that if the void makes a copy of you, is it possible that that copy might think it is you? Because it has your memories, it has your feelings, it is an exact doppelganger. And if so, is the operator that we are playing with even the actual operator? When we made a deal with him, right? When we made a deal with the Indifference, it is said that we offered up our light. Now, what that is can be interpreted and seen as many different things, but what if our light was us? And the only thing that was left was this void entity, this void copy. And this void copy belongs to the Indifference. It belongs to the void. It is a part of the void. Interesting indeed, isn't it? Now, we all know the Indifference has a lot of influence over a lot of people, but it is difficult to grasp for what time period this has been happening. If you look at when Albrecht Entrati went into the void in the first time, that might have been 1,000 years ago. That might have been 2,000 years ago, which means the Indifference has had some modicum of control over some people at least, or some things at least, for the past few thousand years. That alone allowed the Indifference to talk to Nissi Rusalka since she was a child in the form of a spider. And if you have played the new Isleweaver update, then you might know what I'm talking about. If not, it is a piece of lore bit where Nissi Rusalka talks about a spider that came to her and offered to eat all her problems away. And as she grew up, she repetitively said no to this and no to that and no to this and no to that, until at the end she decided that she has nothing to live for anymore. And she said yes. And that is when the Indifference got to her. That is when the Indifference said, "It's my time now." Well, that's just talking about Nissi Rusalka. Another person who has been talked to by the Indifference was Parvis Granum. In multiple occasions, Parvis Granum talks about a whisper of desire telling him how to profit, telling him how to get on top, and it works. The crazy thing is it works. But that is one thing. Listening to your desire and just acting out on it is one thing, but there are parts where some scriptures talks about Parvis Granum understanding void tongue. Given Parvis Granum was also stuck in the void for who knows how long. But that level of influence that the Indifference can take a hold of over him can be tremendous. And if you think about it, if he has had a whisper since he was a child growing up, that means the Indifference was working with him, or working on him at least, for at least a few hundred years, or whatever, how old he is. He might also be thousands of years old. I don't know the answer to that. Let me know in the comments if you do. But all of that just points towards the Indifference having an extreme amount of control. And that is only over select people. What about other people who have traversed the void? What about societies who have had some form of contact with the void? How can you be sure that anybody is anybody at this point? Now, getting to Margulis, to Lotus, to Nata, the sentient Hanhao has talked about how Margulis, or the Lotus, will be changed because even for creatures like them, even for sentients, death takes a toll. The Lotus herself, though, she talks about how she can hear the call of the Indifference wanting to take the operator away, how she wants it to.
My child, the great Indifference wants to take. I want to let it. I feel only the call. You, my champion, please drown out that noise that beckons. If any other answers the call, no, it has to be you.
Which means she might be actively fighting against the Indifference in her mind at this very moment, but that also begs the question, is the Lotus that we're seeing right now the actual Lotus? If we take the same rule about us, the Drifter, and the Void entity, and you apply it to anybody that the Void has had an extreme amount of contact with, that means that none of us might be real. Or all of us might be stuck in the Void. What do you think about the situation? Is there anything that I might have missed that might progress this theory further, or maybe even break it down? I never want people to just agree with me, so let me know in the comments exactly what you know. But with that being said, I want to ask you to think ahead, speculate, theorize, and wait for the new update, the Devil's Triad especially, to come. A lot of answers will lie in those updates. But with that being said, I will ask you one last question, and that is, when you see the Lotus, when you see Albrecht Entrati, when you see Parvus Granum, when you see yourself, do you ever want to play